I want to kind of bring it in initially to what we were hearing about in the interview, you know?
Yes, because a lot of that was about, wait, isn't bot lane really good for these teams? Isn't it going to be super bloody? And the consensus with this draft has been, absolutely yes. We have double engaged sports. I mean, these kind of drafts even make me feel like, you know in your fighting games, you basically have echo fighters, which are basically a fighter just slightly different, if not the same. Good number of these champions do very similar things to each other, gives me same kind of vibes. And what this sets up for me is strong 2v2's bot that can fight level 1, level 2, and then a level 3 angle coming in from junglers as well. We could get 3v3s very early into the game heading down towards bot side, and actually, it could evolve into 4v4, and a big part of that is you see in that mid lane inventory for Ahri, those are dematerializers. Helps you push in the wave. You can push in from level 7, actually. Completely in the backline, but either way, it helps you push out just a bit quicker before that. Look, all eyes on bot lane. Isolate that top lane matchup for them to outplay themselves as they see fit, but bot lane is where the real brawl happens.
Well, I'm going to keep my eyes down there just to see if you're correct, but of course we know that both of these teams prioritize playing like this, and I'm really excited because we've got two compositions. While there are differences, especially in those solo lanes, which we'll probably get into a little bit later when they start being a little bit more interesting, maybe roaming down bot, maybe some shenanigans up in the top side with the Akali versus Jace. But these two teams in the jungle and in the bot lane want to do the exact same thing as you mentioned. So now we're going to get a really good barometer about how good these players are playing today, because it's not going to be about who drafted what, it's going to be about how well they play it.
And I love this game because, again, just setting the stakes down again, winner of this series goes to EU Masters.
Yes.
That is a huge thing for this series. There's a lot of pressure on these players. Many of them have been there before. I'm sure we'll put some of those names to the cast a little bit later on as things slow down. But this game is all on execution. We said similar comps, similar ways to get into the game. Actually, every lane is gankable. Every lane is available to kind of get outplayed on its own, which is, it's great in the sense for me that, you know, the person who's winning at least this game one, this team which wins, is the one which played better. They executed better.
Yes. And that is exactly what we want to see from a team that is going to be sent to European Masters. We want teams that are able to show that they can beat the domestic rivals, because we've got rivals across Europe as a region who have been talking a lot of smack recently. And
what do you mean?
I mean, you know, we got to just make sure that we're dominating and sending our best teams and performing in this game. Both of these teams have looked exceptionally good so far in playoffs, especially when you're looking at the likes of Dusty. But hey, Vikings hit level 3. He's moving up towards the top side. Deja vu if you were watching the series on Monday, because he really likes helping Alif out, who in the regular season maybe wasn't having the most top. Now I'm going to hold that point because C-Boy could be caught out at his red buff going forward, looking for the charge. C-Boy's flashing away. It doesn't matter though. The flash from Vikings good. They go over the wall. First blood goes over to Viking. Red buff 2.
Oh, and Viking gets the better timing on the clear. He just turns up at the right time, and almost enemy number 1 for Bifrost. Sat there looking across at that jungler on the other side of the rift. Gets ahead early.
FGG looking towards Fury, flashing forward, gets the stun. Vikings there as well. Win becomes Lying and gets a second one. Straight out the gates for Dusty.
And in as many minutes he gets that many kills, 2 for 2. That Xin Zhao is so accelerated at this point. We said that every lane has an angle into it. These junglers have options galore. We were looking towards bot lane, but maybe because that was so obvious, they say, they wouldn't think we'd go topside, would they? And yet they do. Both teams trying to fight around that top side of the map, but it's FGG that obviously turns up to the party, and Dusty have themselves a big lead, and Dusty play well through leads.
Absolutely. They are the momentum-based team. Initial, said it on Monday, he said it today, and we were talking in the green room before, and we were like, hey, if Dusty lose the first couple of games, it might be a little bit rough, but talk us through this again.
Well, what happens is, Viking finds a half-health Lee Sin on his buff, and kills him by 3. That's my expert analysis.
This is why you get the big bucks. You've got that high-level knowledge, but then immediately moving towards the mid lane. And as you said, we were thinking that bot lane was going to be where the action is, but Vikings like, nah, just going to kill the Lee Sin.
This is actually a really interesting thing, because FGG turns up on this timer. This is actually quite an LPL Jinx reset, where you can reset early, you can buy a cull, which is exactly what's happened with Venza. As I was checking with Asheen when I had some casts with him just a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying, you know, this is the thing we see all the time over there. Now, I haven't seen it much in other regions, but that allows Jinx to reset, get that FGG to go mid, and they get so much out of it. Dusty's early game, very coordinated here.
Absolutely, and FGG, that's the kind of play that we've loved seeing from him since the second half of the split, where Dusty started to perform at another level. FGG had to make that step up to that another level, and he's been doing it exceptionally well.
Top side is happening again. There's a backland roaming up. There's a Viking in tow. looking a bit like Linda's fun here.
Yeah, Shikari just throws down the smoke, but that's going to dissipate. And now it's 3v1 under tower. Can he get away? No chance at all as Alif picks up his first of the game.
And it's a third kill onto a third member of Bifrost. They've managed to affect the jungle, affect the mid, affect the top, and that is suddenly 3 early skirmishing champions on the side of Bifrost put behind against their opposing numbers, and Dusty are very, very happy with how this early game has gone. We said, oh, you know, they love to play through that lead. They're great at playing around early. But what does that mean? What does it mean to have a Xin Zhao that is that fed when you have a Jace that's now ahead of their opposing number 2? We know that because these teams are so similar in the way that they want to play it out, all of your strengths you're playing around are going to be matched by even higher strengths from the side of Dusty in terms of trying to have those skirmishing 1v1 assassination potential out of your top side and then having these big bursty fights. Obviously, this is a very squishy set of team comps. You give that much extra damage over to one side, those fights end that much more explosively.
Absolutely. And Dusty starting to hit level 6. They've got it in the mid lane. They've got it in the top lane. Of course, in top lane, level 6 isn't that hype for Jace, but the damage is going to be good regardless. And for Bifrost, hey, they're going to be a little bit worried about how the early game has gone. Fortunately for them, one thing that should be noted, the bot side, something that we talked about quite hype, hasn't really been affected by this. Viking hasn't taken his lead down there yet.
Absolutely baited by that. Bot lane's going to be bloody. It's 3v3.
Duel was just sitting there like, we're just going to play around bot side, and then Vikings like...
is the one part of the map which has had 0 action. FGG got 1 look in. Everyone else completely out of the picture.
I mean, you said there's been no action. Bifrost have got the Dragon down there as a very small thing. We've got the Hex tech to start us off. The Infernal will be coming through next to a couple of decent early Dragons. As Fury moving forward, getting the damage. Backlink to the flash towards the support from Viking FGG, who have moved on through. Not going to be able to find anything, though. But, and you know, they're still threatening these 1v1 situations.
Exactly, because as much as you get extra damage for getting ahead as the side of Dusty, you don't get that much tanky about that same kind of metric, right? Because the only people that are tanky on these teams are, of course, the Nautilus and the Owner, and even when they get behind, they feel a lot like CC bots with a slightly larger HP bar than the other people on the rift. That's kind of it. Now, see that Free really trying to pounce in this matchup. And of course, you counters the Ori versus LeBlanc. You can see once you use the double distort, wow, it's great damage. How are you getting out now? And takes the opportunity to attempt the 1v1, force out the flash, and suddenly now maybe C-Boy has an angle into that mid lane. And we start to having to ask that question. How do Bifrost organize the map, rotate around to find angles to take down some of these Dusty members and pick apart their dominant early game that's been on show so far?
Dominant early game has slowed in the past couple of minutes. As you said, the first couple of kills in 3 minutes was very nice, but now it's just a case of just seeing it out. We're going to have Rift Herald on the map pretty soon, so it might be a case of Dusty looking to play around that because, of course, you can get the kills, but if you can't turn those kills into objectives, especially these early towers, then you might have a little bit of a bad time.
Potentially, of course, you have 8 minutes hits. We have... well, both bot laners of Bifrost heading up towards the Herald spawn. Herald, obviously, a very good ability to, or rather, window of time to start getting yourself some financial gain as opposed to just those kills coming through. However, if Bifrost choose to start this, I'm a little worried you don't have the Nautilus ult right now, but as it seems though, Dusty keeping the Jinx bot lane, rather preferring to get the plates very easily at that point, though Viking is still hanging in the area just in case.
They have vision of it and they're sending members, which means that they probably want to contest if nothing else is going to get very, very low. Viking thinking about going for the steal, looking towards it, but decides against out of anchor range. But Bifrost will be able to sneak that one away, not so subtly, but they get out regardless.
So now the question is, what do you get from this Herald? You've lost, what, 1.5 waves in bot lane, thereabouts. You've lost 1 plate on that bot lane turret. So you're kind of getting towards parity at this point. Because this is a cannon wave, you're actually going to get just the back end of this wave as OD. But that is actually 2 plates now. So that's largely going to be the value from the Herald recouped already. But at least Bifrost are at least trading in this. It's much better than them giving up a Herald because they wouldn't really be in a position to defend that if the strong members of the Xin Zhao and everyone else comes to skirmish around that. I think that they still have to kind of take the poison chalice and say, all right, okay, we're going to lose something across the map, but at least we don't give over the Herald as well. We couldn't have defended that as well.
Absolutely, and you can see that actually indicated by the momentum meter at the top of your screen. It looks like our expert analysts are over talking about how the game's going and giving you an idea at home. We've got a little bit for Dusty right now. That very strong early game was probably indicative, and being able to go even at, I was going to say at worst, but of course, depending on how this Rift Herald is used, it could actually get more. We've seen some very good Rift Heralds so far in playoffs. but they think, hey, Dusty, very strong start, momentum-based team, know what they're doing.
That's fairly, I think that's fairly appropriate. And again, but whenever teams are very similar to each other in terms of the team comps, it needs to become that much more pronounced because, as we said, all of your strengths are just kind of outdone by the other team because they do pretty much what you do, but they got more gold to fuel it through that same way. Of course, keeping an eye on towards this lead and have to see whether it grows or not. Obviously, Dusty have snowballed very effectively with leads in the past. But this game, of course, you do have the Jinx. It's slightly more, not convenient, the other one. It's slightly easier to play around than the FLS to really activate because you don't have to wait for certain weapon combinations. But either way, Bifrost do have similar tools, of course, to fight back in. Let's see if Dusty can hold on to this lead and accelerates it to the same extent that they have done in previous series.
Again, keep your eyes on Lee Sin because he is the one who's holding a lot of that gold deficit in his pocket, ready to unleash the push. He's going to have to do it in the next couple of minutes before it times out. But where would you want to see this put in? Do you want to see Odie getting a little bit of gold on that Aphelios? Do you want to see it going in someone like the Akali? Shikari, we know, very, very good at this champion.
I feel like if you do get a lead on the Akali, you're really, really happy. But whenever you can get gold on AD carry when it's the Jinx, the Aphelios, it's almost always worth it. I think in this case, it's going to be more determined by where it's just easiest to put it down in regards to enemy rotating towards you, because most of the time you don't really want to send that Herald into a tower without being able to auto it down a little bit before. If you can take 4 or 5 plates with the Herald, that's obviously very good value, but that rarely happens when you've got enemy champions lining up to defend it and protecting that crash.
So we're going to be able to pick up the second dragon of the game. Mountain will be our first Rift and Soul today, which, you know, a bit more passive, gives some of that survivability, which these two teams have been lacking, as you mentioned. Could this be a little bit of a band-aid for one of the sides?
I think this is very important if Bifrost do get it, because of course you're working against Jace Poke, you're working against potentially fire cannon autos coming out of the Jinx, and Mountain Soul tends to be very good against Poke, right? Because particularly against Jace, who gets up only every, I don't know, he gets his shock blast up every 10 seconds or so, something like that. I can't remember the exact time, but it's around that. Mountain Soul comes into the similar kind of timing where you just eat one, it takes off, you know, 100 or 200 damage from that, and that happens every time he's hitting a target. That's actually a lot of relevant damage taken off the table. Now, Dusty are now looking at this and saying, okay, we got the kills, that's great. What's happening with the neutrals? They haven't got a single one yet. Bifrost keeping that ticking along nicely. It isn't just those 2 dragons, it's the Herald too. The question is, what can they do with that to kind of force Dusty to plateau and fight them on their terms instead of them using their advantages where they see fit?
I mean, this is something that we said, actually, is Aleph might have overextended. We're going to see the Rift Herald being dropped as Seaboy dives on in, gets the kick, gets the damage. Jace can't get out. It's the first kill of the game going over to Bifrost.
Okay, and there you see Aleph's overstepping a little bit, had members on the top side of the map heading towards him, but didn't get there nearly in time. I was actually wondering if Seaboy was trying to ward hop there, but puts down the Herald anyway. It's going to get gold either way, because of course you can't ward hop to a Herald. He just sits there and goes, hey Jace, I'm going to put this down, I'll deal with you in a second.
Just dropping it down. He could get free play, so that's the money that we saw being traded in the bot side already recouped, as Vikings going to move up just to deny it getting too much more damage. As Fury takes a decent chunk, gets the Charmers, Backland bops on out. My concern here is, Dusty, they did really great in the early game, and we actually spoke about, we said, are they going to be able to transition that into objectives? So far, the answer has been,
cancels it.
No, and I think Backland's in trouble. We'll be able to get away, but now Fury dives away for FGG. Decent play from the Ahri mid.
That was actually very, very close to being a kill, and I'll tell you why, because one of the things about Ahri ult is that it doesn't track invisible targets. Presses the ult and doesn't land in time, so the LeBlanc clone makes them go invisible, don't get that extra tick of damage from the Spirit Rush. If that lands with an auto, that's a kill. And Fury is actually playing the 1v1 matchup fairly well when it's been on screen. Question is that actually going to lead to anything tangible in their own side? Because, again, we've seen a couple of nice chunks, seen a flash taken away, blah, 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 it's a reset, but it hasn't led to anything more than that yet. It's close, but not quite there.
And I mean, I don't know if that's you angling to have Ahri on your screen more often, or if that's just talking about this.
Just change to the view of just Fury for the entire game. That'd be awesome.
Well, let's have a look at the gold really quickly at the bottom of your screen, because 14 minutes plates have fallen. Of course, Dusty sitting at a recently comfortable gold lead at this early stage in the game, and you can see exactly where that's being held. Look at that top side.
That's definitely there, but then actually even looking down at the AD carry as well, we saw that cull, and that's obviously finally coming into fruition at this point. But yes, it was all topside all the time in the first couple of minutes of the game. Explosive out of the gate with Dusty, but we haven't seen an extra series of plays at that point. We said that there were ways to play through topside, but honestly, with with the way that Dusty have been playing around it, Viking is struggling to get into lanes. There's actually quite a lot of vision in the river now, so he's struggling to continue to be a presence on the map. And Dusty, I think that they need to really start getting FGG into the equation too, because Viking on his own is struggling to keep things afloat.
I think there's going to be a fight here as Viking's going to be dove onto, has to throw the ultimate down, but everyone's getting in range to put down the damage. Venza misses the ultimate, but is now putting the rockets directly into Duel, has to go Gordon, but look at Odie, he's online in the back line, looking for damage, gets one, it's a shutdown onto Viking, towards Venza, another goes down as he goes over the wall. Fury's going to be able to pick him up on the Ari, but look at the backside, Backline's in trouble. Odie shuts him out. It's a double kill for Aphelios as Bifrost take the first major engagement.
And for the first time in something like 10 games, Dusty have overstayed their welcome, they've overfought, and they've lost a crucial fight. Dusty, they have been so imperious at playing out their leads, and this one is just a little too far. Now, having the Xin Zhao here for this fight with the ultimate is so important. You can see the amount of damage that was blocked with this, but Odie isn't focused on and has the highest DPS combo in the game once you get those Chakram stacked up on the Crescendum. Stacks them up like an absolute whirlwind of metal. And Odie does ridiculous damage without Dusty ever getting to shut them down.
And that's a fear now, because you look at Bifrost, momentum has swung back in their favor according to our analysts, and you can't blame them. They've got all the neutral objectives so far. Yes, they lost out on that first tower, but for me, the question really is, what do Dusty need to do about the situation? Because things have slowed down. Venza's going to be caught out by the hook. There's so much CC. Seymour dives on through to secure the kill. Simple as that.
And again, it's just a little bit beyond their safe boundaries is Dusty playing right now. We talked about just before that big fight, but what's happening with the vision? A lot of this river vision is starting to fall apart. And again, they haven't really been tracking the members of Bifrost well enough to keep themselves safe. This is going to lead to a very early soul point. And Bifrost, after that disaster of the first 3 to 4 minutes, have come back absolutely swinging.
And now they found themselves swung to parity and getting themselves a third dragon at Soul in 5 minutes time. They've been Imperious on the bottom side controlling that one. And I mean, now for Dusty, they're hanging around looking towards this second Rift. Hell may pick up their first objective of the game, but they're doing it very slowly. It doesn't look like there's going to be much commitment, but Aphelios and Nautilus are in the neighborhood if they wanted to contest.
Lee Sin's not there. You probably shouldn't be poking your head in here. This is the area of the map you've just given up control over. That's a chance you're going to get picked. Duel's actually going to figure that out right now.
Duel might actually just get picked as he's going to be dove onto by 3 members, and that's simple as that. But the Rift Herald is going to reset.
That's a very dead Nautilus. Oh, come
my
on.
word, that might be a very dead
again.
Venza, though. Dives away from Seymour, who now cannot dive forward. Backland is there, but it's just jumping around. No one goes down, but Venza, we've talked about his positioning so many times in the past, needs to be careful.
Particularly in the early split, we thought we'd done away with that a little. Venza was, of course, not the most responsible with his gold leads, but Dusty not even using the Herald, taking down a full mid lane outer turret, getting some territory in that area of the map. That's a big win for them, actually, given how that bot lane could have led to a really big momentum shift, particularly with Odie getting online on the Aphelios and being one of our statistically best AD carries in the league, if not actually the best statistical
I think so, yeah.
AD carry in the league. He's got incredible stats across the board, but I feel like now we're back into kind of parity. Again, we were saying both these comps do similar things. You've got Leon and Nautilus both trying to catch out these mobile but long-range hypercarry ADCs with these aggressive skirmishing junglers, and mid laners and top laners kind of doing similar assassination-y mixed damage threats. So really, we are back right on the knife's edge.
It's a case of watching what these two teams can do in the next few minutes. I think they're going to be pivotal. Getting down this Rift Herald will be nice for Dusty. They can't get plates, but they might be able to bow down the objective, open up the map a little bit further as Backland dives away from Seaboy. Leeson might look for an engage here, might look for a steal, but he's not going to be able to do so, and Viking is just going to grab the eye and skedaddle.
They were just window shopping. Just window shopping. They would say, oh, look, that's very much it. I have seen that it is a Herald. I have seen that I'm not getting it. They have a look in, see if there's anything to be done. Nothing seen there at this point, but Fury is going to take that mid lane, the top lane out of turret. And speaking of opening up the map, I feel like at this point, I look at Shikari on the Akali and I think, that's a danger. Akali often needs a bit of room to start chasing down people on these side lanes, and they have space.
Ender's in trouble, the depth charge, and you know what? It's just going to be another assassination. Vikings moving forward, looking for Seaboy, but Fury's hanging around the side. This could be worrying for the Xin Zhao. Dive on forward, picks up one, but now Fury's the one in trouble, looking for a flank, but just going to be collapsed on. The chains go wide, as Fury should be able to prance out of dodge. as Dusty lose out on Venza, but pick up C-Boy.
Okay, so it is again another 1-for-1, keeping things right down the middle of gold values being traded over. But whenever you lose your AD carry multiple times on the trot, it's losing farm, it's losing XP, and Venza falling behind on the Jinx is a bit worrying for the side of Dusty, because while the Jinx will always inevitably come online, you're now dealing with the Akali that can go dive onto an under-leveled Jinx. It's a level behind their opposing number. You've got the Ahri that can do similar things. And if you're sat here as Venza, you're looking at your team going, hey, can I not be left alone in a lane again? This is kind of scary now.
I mean, if we can get production just to show us gold very quickly, because look at this. We were talking about how that gold lead, Venza grabbing that early cull, was crucial. Look at it now, completely flipped.
Has completely flipped, and while there are some leads, of course, on the top side, still in place for Dusty, particularly with the Jace picking up a lot of plates. Of course, it's how do you leverage that? Because that was what we were saying in regards to Dusty in general when they play out leads. Jace is one of the better champions for doing this, but again, that has to be around objectives a lot of the time when you're dealing with grouped up poke engagements. But if Bifrost just rush down the dragon, get the Mountain Soul, he won't be able to do that for the rest of the game. And that's suddenly a window of power which Dusty haven't been able to play around. What does that mean, of course, for the entire state of this game? We kind of said, oh yeah, a lot of these teams are looking to be very bursty team fights and play around the 5v5s later into the game with just high amounts of mobility, but work through some of their range too. Dusty are going to be really struggling to fight on their own terms and get themselves advantages in those scenarios. I think that they're in a bit of a difficult position now.
I mean, 50 seconds could be the last time they can get parity in a fight where they've got that Jace advantage going through the armor that hasn't been given, and the shield, of course, as well. But Bifrost are setting up their territory. They want to control the river. They've control over the dragon pit. Sorry, there is a ward in there. It hasn't been swept just yet, so Fury is on vision. Dusty might be looking to try and get a pick, but members of Bifrost are in support. FGG goes over. He can't follow up through. Fury goes golden as FGG standing in the back pit, thinking about going out, will have to flash as Dusty. Remember, they've got the Rift Herald that they can leverage for a little bit in the mid lane. That's exactly what they're going to do with Venza there as well. But with Dragon coming up in 15 seconds, you've got to think that Bifrost might have control of the area. A-Lift gets blown up. FGG goes even lower, will go down as Fury just slides over the wall. Dragon will land. It's going to be a 4v5 as Backlund needs to be careful about going through for the poke. This could be Soul, but it looks like Bifrost getting quite a lot of respect are going to drag it out.
Oh, that was serious damage from Odie, who has, again, the rifle turrets, the strongest combo for playing around objectives. Fury doesn't have the ult anymore, getting aggressed onto.
Needs to be a little bit careful. Viking with the ultimate, but the re-engage comes on through. Caught on the chombers, but Viking flashes regardless. Shikari on the side could look for a flank. It's going to be secured by Bifrost. They've got themselves a very early Dragon Soul. This is going to make things so much easier for them.
Oh, just past the 22-minute mark. And again, you can see that Backlund had to play out that fight that way. Jump in, get some kind of pseudo vision using your face and just distorting and flipping back to it, but was punished accordingly. Of course, LeBlanc doesn't have great sustain, gets chunked out very heavily at the start of it, and both Odie and Fury taking matters into their own hands with both weapon combinations and then pulling the ult from the Ahri to close things down. And I've been really impressed, actually, with how Bifrost have played very decisively around these bigger moments in the game. And Backlund, he has to play like this. There's no vision in the river. Gets in for a decent chunk at that point. That's one to the good, but all it takes when you're at half HP is one bad trade. And Odie does a lot of work to set up the real knockout punch from Fury.
And now it's just as simple as just grabbing up the dragon. They pull it out and stop any kind of contest. And Fury might be a little bit overextended, but he's playing Bouncer with duel in support. He's never going to be in too much danger. But with this dragon going down, an interesting dynamic now, because we don't see this too often in the NLC. We're going to have a very, very early Elder Dragon spawning onto the Rift.
That is very true. And again, it's not like Dusty's damage completely disappears.
Yes.
Now, if they're playing slower fights, yeah, Mountain Soul being up multiple times to take up multiple skill shots is actually going to be quite difficult, because both the Jace and, as we saw, the LeBlanc as well, are going to struggle to chunk through multiple shields. And so we'll have to track really how much this damage sticks from this team, which is on, again, remember, a 9-0 win streak. This is actually a big moment for them now to say, guys, you're in a deficit. You're behind for once. How do you deal with that? How do you actually mentally deal with that after not having to experienced that for so long?
And I mean, our analysts are saying that these guys are very far behind. If you look at the momentum meter at the top of your screen, they're in a hole and they need to find a way to dig themselves out of it. And I mean, they have tools to do so, right? Venza the positioning, he's been caught out a couple too many times, you'd think, potentially in this game, but he's finding his way a little bit more back into it, farming up safely now that he's got a bit more support from his team in that regard. And I mean, you've got Jace, you've got the LeBlanc, they are able to dive in and do some damage, and hey, you don't want to do extended trades, even with that armor, LeBlanc and Jace can still do a fair chunk.
They can do, and that means that Bifrost still not going to have the easiest time to play out this game either. They still need, they still need to be disciplined. That's the way I'm going to put it, right? Because if you got someone randomly standing beyond their vision, getting picked off by a Leona with everyone kind of pouncing on them over the wall, you're still going to have a pretty bad time at that point. So watch out for Dusty playing the pick game. That's probably their way back into it. Of course, there is always the chance that Baron changes things up as well. Got teleports coming in. Jace channeling his now too.
They're going to want to come into this one very, very quickly. Got Shikari on the side. Viking could be in trouble here. As you see, Shikari dive on top of him, goes into smoke. But on the other side, there's another fight. Viking is in trouble. He's the one with the smoke, but he's taken down. FGG goes as well as Akali dives on through for the double. Fury on the back looking for Fenton. Will be able to find him, but they can't find him with the Nautilus. But he's going to get blown up regardless as Ari dives back in for Aleph. It's another. It's a wipe. It's an ace for Bifrost. They don't lose a member, and Baron is surely theirs.
Yeah, to hell with your discipline. Bifrost draw in the fight. Dusty, they can't play it out slow enough, and they can't find a fast enough fight which targets just a single person. They come in drips and drabs, they get taken apart, and Bifrost, they are now in demanding control of this game.
I'm really excited to see, hopefully we get a replay of that fight, because just watch how Shikari moves through. He gets the assassination onto the Xin Zhao, and then rotates back into his team, and just follows the fight all the way through. Keep your eyes on the Akali here.
Wouldn't it be funny now if I just didn't talk about it? Okay,
yeah, absolutely, just ignore it.
Look at him. He has the proto belt, turns that first part of the ult, and he has the second part to kind of get back to safe boundaries on the other side. And yeah, I mean, the Akali sat in the right brush at the right time and cuts off one of these entrances that Dusty are playing towards. They didn't have the vision to check it out. They really were hoping that Bifrost had just slipped up somewhere. They did allow, of course, that one vision for the two real poke/burst champions to get through up in that top lane Tri-Brush, but that wasn't nearly enough. They engaged very heavily after that point. Bifrost, at this point, looking like they're coasting towards a game 1 victory.
Yeah,
maybe not, though.
FGG diving on top, getting some damage onto Fury. He's going to dive back, though. The Ahri has the dashes. One more available, throws down the Everfrost. As Shikari goes on in, looking to get assassinations to save the mid laner. Another Dancer Charm. The damage as they pick up one onto Aleph. Viking is in trouble as Tool now turns up to the party. You can see C-Boy actually between FGG and safety. The Zenith Blade will help him get through, but the damage on the Lee Sin is still there. Looking to get one more as Dusty caught out, taken down, and Fury survives.
And somehow, some way, we start this game off. We start the pre-show off saying, man, these bot lanes are good. They were not involved there from Bifrost at all. It is the entire top side of the map saying, you know what? We're going to take this game-ending fight to our own hands, put a win on the board.
Now the question is, I don't know if Backland's going to be able to defend this, but he's recalling to try. Bifrost are not here to mess around. They see your 9-0 win streak, and they're handing you a massive L in the first game of this series. It's Bifrost with the advantage, and Dusty, they need to go back to the playbook.
And they're going to have to see what they can put together in a very short amount of time, because sometimes you come into a best of 5 and whatever you just